Okay, let's be real. When you hear the word stoic, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Some emotionless robot sitting in the corner, staring at the wall, pretending they're above feelings, right? Or maybe it's someone suffering in silence, acting like life's problems don't exist. Well, I'm here to tell you, that's all nonsense. Today we're breaking down the 6 biggest stereotypes about Stoicism, the ones that make this incredible philosophy sound boring, outdated, or even just plain weird. Because here's the truth. Stoicism isn't about being emotionless or ignoring life's pleasures. It's about mastering your emotions, thriving in chaos, and living your best life, no matter what life throws your way. Imagine this. You're in the middle of a stressful workday, your boss is breathing down your neck, and you're 2 minutes away from completely losing it. Stoicism? It's the tool that keeps you calm, focused, and on top of the situation. Or maybe life just threw you a curveball, a breakup, a missed opportunity, or even a loss. Stoicism doesn't tell you to just get over it. It teaches you how to deal with it in a way that's productive and empowering. So if you've ever thought Stoicism was all doom and gloom, stick around. You're about to see why this ancient philosophy is more relevant today than ever. First things first, what is Stoicism? In simple terms, Stoicism is a philosophy that teaches you how to control what you can control, let go of what you can't, and focus on living a good and meaningful life. It's about recognizing that life isn't about what happens to you, it's about how you respond. Think of life like the ocean. You can't stop the waves, right? But you can learn how to surf. Stoicism teaches you how to surf through life's storms. It all started over 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece with a guy named Zeno. Later, it was developed and made famous by philosophers like Seneca, Epictetus, who was literally born a slave, and Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who wrote meditations to remind himself how to stay strong and kind in the face of adversity. But here's the cool part. Stoicism isn't some ancient, dusty relic. It's not something you need a PhD to understand. It's practical, it's simple, and anyone can use it. Feel stressed out at work? Stoicism can help. Going through a breakup? Stoicism can help. Want to stop overreacting when someone cuts you off in traffic? Yep, Stoicism's got you covered there too. The problem is, a lot of people misunderstand it. They hear Stoic and think boring or cold or detached. People think it's all about suffering, rejecting fun, or living like a monk. And that's just not true. So today, we're clearing the air. Let's dive into the 6 most common stereotypes about Stoicism and why they're dead wrong. Stoicism means suffering in silence. All right, let's tackle the next myth, that Stoicism is all about suffering in silence. You know, just gritting your teeth, bottling up your pain, and pretending everything's fine. Now, this idea comes from a misunderstanding of one of Stoicism's core principles, enduring hardship with courage. But here's the thing, enduring doesn't mean ignoring, and it definitely doesn't mean silently suffering. Let's say you're going through a tough time, maybe you lost your job, or you're dealing with a breakup. Stoicism doesn't tell you to slap on a fake smile and pretend you're okay. That's not strength, that's denial. What Stoicism says is, face the problem head on. Acknowledge your pain, accept the reality of the situation, and then ask, what can I do about it? Epictetus, who, by the way, spent years of his life as a slave, put it perfectly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Life is going to throw curveballs. That's a guarantee. You can't avoid hardship, but you can decide whether to let it break you or make you stronger. And let's be honest, ignoring your problems doesn't make them go away. It's like sweeping dirt under the rug. Eventually, you're going to trip over the mess. Stoicism isn't about bottling things up. It's about processing them in a healthy way. Here's a modern example. Have you ever heard of Admiral James Stockdale? He was a pilot during the Vietnam War, and his plane was shot down. He spent over 7 years as a prisoner of war, and he endured brutal conditions. But instead of losing hope or falling into despair, he used Stoic principles to survive. Stockdale accepted his situation for what it was. No denial, no pretending, but he never let it crush his spirit. He focused on what he could control, his attitude, his mindset, and his will to keep going. This approach has a name. It's called the Stockdale paradox. You acknowledge the brutal reality of your situation while also believing in your ability to overcome it. You don't ignore pain. you transform it. And that's what Stoicism is really about. It's not about suffering quietly or pretending everything's fine. It's about facing life's challenges with strength, resilience, and courage. So next time someone tells you Stoicism is just suffering in silence, you can tell them, no, it's about learning to thrive, even in the face of hardship. All right, stereotype number 2, busted. Now let's talk about the idea that Stoicism is only for the elite. Spoiler alert, it's not, and I'll prove it to you. Stoicism is only for the elite. All right, let's tackle stereotype number 3, that Stoicism is only for the elite. You know, rich emperors, philosophers with fancy robes, or people with way too much free time to contemplate life. But here's the truth. Stoicism has always been for everyone. From slaves to emperors, from warriors to farmers, this philosophy has helped people across all walks of life. Let's start with one of the most famous Stoics, Epictetus. This guy wasn't born into wealth or power. He was born a slave. Literally one of the lowest positions in ancient society. And despite having no control over his freedom, Epictetus developed the Stoic mindset that freed his mind. He taught that no matter how bad your external situation, you still have control over your thoughts, your actions, and your responses. Think about that for a second. If a man born into slavery can find peace and meaning through Stoicism, what excuse do we have? On the other end of the spectrum, you've got Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, arguably one of the most powerful men in the world at the time. And yet he struggled with the same things we do: stress, self-doubt, dealing with people who frustrated him. His journal, which became Meditations, wasn't written for anyone else to read. It was his private way of reminding himself how to live better. Marcus didn't write, "This is just for emperors." He wrote lessons that apply to all of us. Like this one: waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Simple, direct, and relatable, whether you're a CEO, a student, or someone working 3 jobs to make ends meet. And that's the beauty of Stoicism. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, or what your circumstances look like. It's a mindset, not a membership club. You don't need money, status, or a degree to practice Stoicism. You just need the willingness to take responsibility for your mind and your actions. Let me give you a modern-day example. Ever heard of the Navy SEALs? These guys are some of the toughest people on the planet. And what's one of the key philosophies they rely on during grueling training and missions? You guessed it, Stoicism. They use the same principles of focus, discipline, and mental toughness that Epictetus taught over 2,000 years ago. Or take Ryan Holiday, one of the leading voices on modern Stoicism. His books like The Obstacle is the Way and The Daily Stoic have reached millions of people around the world. Students, entrepreneurs, parents, and everyday folks looking for guidance. The bottom line is this: Stoicism is for everyone. It doesn't care about your status, your wealth, or your background. Whether you're in the boardroom, the classroom, or working overtime to make rent, Stoicism gives you the tools to handle life's challenges with courage, wisdom, and resilience. So no, it's not some elitist philosophy reserved for ancient emperors and scholars. It's as practical and down-to-earth as it gets. All right, stereotype number 3, busted. Now let's move on to stereotype number 4, the idea that Stoics reject pleasure. Spoiler alert, they don't. Stoics reject pleasure. All right, let's talk about stereotype number 4, the idea that Stoics reject pleasure. This one probably comes from people hearing words like discipline and self-control and imagining a bunch of miserable monks sitting in a cave somewhere, refusing to enjoy life. Stoics reject pleasure. All right, let's talk about stereotype number 4, the idea that Stoics reject pleasure. This one probably comes from people hearing words like discipline and self-control and imagining a bunch of miserable monks sitting in a cave somewhere, refusing to enjoy life. But here's the truth. Stoicism doesn't reject pleasure. It rejects being controlled by pleasure. There's a big difference. Let's break it down. Imagine you're scrolling through social media and you see a post about someone taking an expensive vacation or eating at a fancy restaurant. It's easy to think, wow, that's the life. But here's the thing. Does chasing those pleasures actually make you happy? Or does it just keep you on an endless treadmill, always needing more? Stoicism teaches that pleasures, like food, money, travel, or even success, are not bad. They're just neutral. What matters is your relationship with them. Are you enjoying these things in moderation, or are they controlling your life? Epictetus said it best: freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And guess what? If you need constant pleasure to feel happy, you're not free, you're stuck. Let's say you love chocolate. Nothing wrong with that. A Stoic would tell you to enjoy that chocolate, but don't become dependent on it. Because once you need it, you've handed control of your happiness over to something external. Here's another example. Say you've worked hard and finally saved up enough for that dream vacation. A Stoic wouldn't tell you to skip it because pleasure is bad. They'd say, go, enjoy yourself. But while you're there, they'd also remind you, don't let the experience define your happiness. If the flight gets delayed, if the weather sucks, if the food isn't perfect, none of that should ruin your peace of mind. The point isn't to avoid pleasure, it's to make sure you're not chasing it endlessly or letting it take over your life. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: pleasures are temporary. That fancy dinner, it's over in an hour. That vacation, a week later you're back at work. And if you've built your happiness on those fleeting moments, what happens when they're gone? This is why Stoicism emphasizes inner peace. It's about finding joy in things that don't depend on luck, money, or other people. Things like spending time with people you love, growing as a person, helping others, appreciating the simple things in life, like a good cup of coffee or a beautiful sunset. The philosopher Seneca talked about this all the time. He was incredibly wealthy, but he didn't let that wealth control him. He said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." In other words, true wealth isn't about what you have. It's about being content with what you already have. So no, Stoics don't reject pleasure. They embrace it, but they do it on their terms. They enjoy life's good moments without becoming slaves to them. All right, stereotype number 4, busted. Now let's move on to stereotype 5, the idea that Stoicism is passive and weak. This one's going to be fun. Stoicism is passive and weak. All right, let's take on stereotype number 5, the idea that Stoicism is passive and weak. You know, the classic Stoics just sit back and let life happen to them argument. But here's the truth. Stoicism isn't about doing nothing. It's about taking the right kind of action. It's about courage, discipline, and showing up to face challenges head on, no matter how hard they seem. Let me give you a quick story about one of the toughest Stoics of all time, Cato the Younger. Cato was a Roman statesman, and he lived during a time when Julius Caesar was rising to power. Now, Cato didn't agree with Caesar's politics, and he refused to just sit by and watch the republic fall apart. So what did he do? He fought back, through his words, his actions, and even on the battlefield. Cato was known for being incorruptible. People tried to bribe him, intimidate him, and pressure him into backing down, but he stood firm. He believed in his principles, and he acted on them, even when it cost him dearly. That's the opposite of passive and weak. And here's where people get confused. Stoics aren't reactionary. They don't let emotions like anger or fear push them into doing something rash. Instead, they take deliberate, thoughtful action. When life throws a challenge at them, they ask, what can I control here? What's the best response I can give? What actions align with my values? And then they do it. No drama, no overthinking, just action. Marcus Aurelius summed this up perfectly. He wrote, "Do not be overheard complaining, not even to yourself." In other words, don't waste time whining about problems. Spend that time solving them. Let's bring this into a modern-day example. Picture someone who loses their job. A passive person might sit around blaming the economy, complaining about how unfair life is, and doing nothing. But a Stoic would grieve. Sure, they're human. But then they'd get up, dust themselves off, and start looking for solutions. Update the resume, network, learn a new skill, whatever it takes to move forward. Because Stoicism is all about action. It's about using challenges as opportunities to grow stronger. Think about Navy SEALs again for a second. When they're dropped into impossible situations, no way out, no easy answers, do they sit there and complain? Nope. They focus, they adapt, and they act. And guess what philosophy many SEALs credit for their mental toughness? You got it. Stoicism. So no, Stoics aren't passive or weak. They're some of the most resilient, action-oriented people you'll ever meet. They just channel their energy into things that matter, instead of wasting it on things they can't control. All right, stereotype number 5, busted. And now we've reached the final one, the idea that Stoicism is outdated. Let's wrap this up strong. Stoicism is outdated. All right, we've made it to the final stereotype, the idea that Stoicism is outdated. I get it. It's ancient. We're talking about guys wearing togas and writing on scrolls. What could they possibly teach us in the modern world of iPhones, TikTok, and endless to-do lists? Well, let me ask you this. Do you ever feel stressed out, overwhelmed, like life is moving too fast and you're constantly playing catch-up? Guess what? The Stoics did too. Sure, they didn't have smartphones or social media, but they dealt with the same human challenges we face today: anxiety, anger, grief, difficult people, and the search for meaning in life. And their solutions? They're timeless. Here's a quick example. Ever feel like you're wasting time worrying about things you can't control? The Stoics would tell you, stop. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, focus on what you can control and let the rest go. That's advice you can use right now. Or take Seneca's thoughts on time. He said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Sound familiar? How often do we scroll mindlessly on our phones, lose hours to distractions, or put off the things that truly matter? The truth is, Stoicism isn't outdated. It's exactly what we need today. It's a guide for cutting through the noise, managing stress, and living a life that feels meaningful. Think of it this way. Technology may have changed, but humans haven't. We still feel overwhelmed. We still struggle with our emotions, and we still crave purpose and peace of mind. That's why Stoicism is more relevant than ever. It's not about escaping the modern world. It's about thriving in it. So no, Stoicism isn't outdated. It's a timeless toolkit for living a better life, no matter what year it is. All right, that's all 6 stereotypes. Busted. Let's wrap this up. All right, let's quickly recap the 6 biggest misconceptions about Stoicism that we busted today. Stoics aren't emotionless. They just manage their emotions wisely. Stoicism isn't about suffering in silence. It's about facing challenges head-on. It's not just for the elite. Stoicism is for everyone. Stoics don't reject pleasure. They just refuse to be controlled by it. It's not passive or weak. It's about taking deliberate, meaningful action. And finally, Stoicism isn't outdated. It's a timeless philosophy that's more relevant now than ever. At the end of the day, Stoicism is about one simple thing: living a good life. It's about focusing on what you can control, letting go of what you can't, and becoming the best version of yourself. So, if you've been curious about Stoicism, this is your sign to give it a shot. Start small, read a quote, reflect on it, and apply it to your day. And trust me, over time, you'll start to notice a shift in how you handle life's challenges. If you enjoyed this video and want more practical insights like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next one. Also, let me know in the comments, which of these myths surprised you the most? Thanks for watching, and remember, you can't control what happens to you, but you can always control how you respond. See you next time.